All rise for the jury, please. Thank you. You may all be seated. Court will recall 20 CR 1358, People versus Letecia Stauch. Record should reflect the jury has returned to the courtroom. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I see that juror number 5, that would be you, has all the instructions and things like that. That's usually a tip-off to me that you might be the foreperson. Are you in fact the foreperson? And has the jury reached verdicts in this case? Yes, sir. All right. If you would hand the instructions and the verdict forms to Mr. Sproul, please. Thank you. All right, the verdict forms do appear to be in proper order. I will have a question for you because there's some extra writing on here, but I think I understand what's going on. So with respect to count number 1, charge of murder in the first degree after deliberation, we, the jury, find the defendant Letecia Stauch guilty of count number 1, murder in the first degree after deliberation. With respect to count number 2, charge of murder in the first degree, child under 12, by a person in a position of trust, we, the jury, find the defendant Letecia Stauch guilty of count number 2, murder in the first degree, child under 12, position of trust. With respect to count number 3, charge of tampering with a deceased human body, we, the jury, find the defendant Letecia Stauch guilty of count number 3, tampering with a deceased human body. With respect to count number 4, charge of tampering with physical evidence, we, the jury, find the defendant Letecia Stauch guilty of count number 4, tampering with physical evidence. I wanted to ask the jury, or actually the foreperson, there is some extra writing on here with respect to question number 1. There's a cross through and some initials. And then on part B, there's also a cross through with initials. Was that signifying that you were not answering that and you intended to answer guilty as to that charge? Yes, sir. All right. And is that what you intended with all of the other verdict forms? Yes, sir. All right. With that, does either side wish to have the jury poll the prosecution? Yes, Your Honor. All right, what this means is that this is a process that is sometimes requested by the attorneys following a verdict to make sure that everybody has agreed on all parts of it. So I'll go down the row, starting in the back. Juror number 1, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 2, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 3, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 4, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 5, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 6, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 7, is this and are these your verdicts? Yes, sir. Juror number 8, is this and are these your verdicts? Yes, sir. Juror number 9, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 10, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 11, is this and are these your verdicts? Juror number 12, is this and are these your verdicts? Yes, I want to thank all of you for your service. Jurors don't get a lot of training. However, you all were selected because you were willing to be open-minded and impartial, and were willing to make decisions based on the facts and the law. You, the jury, heard and saw the evidence. You paid attention all day, every day. Someone else may tell you they disagree with your verdict or some aspect of your service. They may want to express their opinion on the matter. However, We didn't ask them for any of their opinions. We asked you for your judgment. We asked you for your verdict based on the law and based on the evidence. Someone else may tell you they think they're better and smarter and more intuitive than all of you were. Ignore them. As a judge, rarely does a day go by that I don't make somebody in the courtroom mad. The fact that some people may disagree with your verdict or the law only means that those who disagree with you were not carefully selected to be fair and impartial. They did not take an oath to follow the law and to judge all of the facts, and they see it differently from you because they didn't see it all from the perspective you did. And they did not discuss the facts with 11 others who were also fair and impartial and sworn to follow the law. You decided this case. This verdict is your verdict. And this is the verdict in the case. No poll, no approval or disapproval, and no press analysis changes that fact. This is the verdict in the case. The press or someone else at some point may wish to talk to you. We live in a world of exceptional voyeurism in reality TV, and this is about as real as it gets. They may try to dissect the evidence, your thought process, and your decision. It's a free country. Anyone can ask you anything about your verdict. You can answer if you choose. They can also, however, respect your privacy and allow you to contact them only if you want to talk to them. And if you don't want to, you don't have to talk to anyone about your verdict. If you do talk with someone, you can tell them as little or as much as you like. Someone may even ask you to give an affidavit regarding some aspect of your jury service. You're free to give an affidavit. You're free to decline to give an affidavit. That is a personal decision you are entitled to make. If anyone continues to talk to you after you have told them you do not want to speak about the matter or becomes critical of you or your jury service, please report that incident to me. Again, I want to thank you very much for your service. Without honest people of our community serving on jurors, we cannot secure the right to a jury trial in this country. And it's a very valuable and a very important right. I want to leave you with some language from a case that was decided by the United States Supreme Court in Louisiana versus Duncan. In that case, an individual was denied the right to a jury by trial, or a trial by jury, sorry. And that case went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court sent it back to the state of Louisiana. And it said, you need to give this man what the Constitution requires, which is a trial by jury. And when it sent the case back to Louisiana, it said, we believe that trial by jury is fundamental to the American scheme of justice. Trial by jury is more than an instrument of justice and more than one wheel of the Constitution. It is the lamp that shows that freedom lives. Without your dedication and sacrifice, that lamp would not shine as brightly as it does. So I truly thank you for your service. You are now discharged with the thanks of the court. And for the last time, all rise for the jury, please. Thank you. You may all be seated. I don't know how you want to proceed on sentencing. I do need to talk to the jury for a few minutes because I need to tell them some things about security issues, counseling issues, and things like that. So I do need to talk with them for a few minutes. I also didn't know if the family, the prosecution, anybody wanted to have some time to process the verdicts. I also understand that everybody's been here for 5 weeks, so I get that part too. So I'm open to whatever you want to do with respect to sentencing, but I probably am going to need at least a half an hour with the jury.
I think that would be appropriate, Judge. The people are obviously ready to go to immediate sentencing. I believe defenses as well.
Okay.
And I can tell you that the family's been thinking about this day for over 3 years. They're ready to go to sentencing as well.
Okay. Then give me about 30 minutes and we will come back and proceed to sentencing at that point in time.
All right.
Janie?
Hello, Your Honor. My name is Janie Cadenas. I am here today as I have sat with the family for the last 3 years as a community member in Lorsen Ranch who has watched the turmoil that this has caused everybody in our community. 3 years ago, we heard as a neighborhood what happened, that a little boy went missing, and we rallied together in a way that most communities can never experience or imagine. We came together and we helped find ways to get media involved, to get search parties involved, to do everything we could to be of assistance to find this little boy, because Gannon wasn't just a neighbor, he was all of our little boys. For months and months until he was found, we were all scared to let our kids go outside because we were scared that they would be kidnapped. We didn't know what was going to happen. And through that process, we all came together and we met Landen and Al, those of us that didn't know them, and we built relationships and friendships and garnered a family relationship with them through that process. But this is just one thing that, as a community member, somebody who was a part of it from the beginning, that I can confidently say, this is the worst tragedy that anybody could ever go through and every parent's nightmare. And I have watched and held Landen as she falls apart time after time. But we are here today and justice has finally been served for Gannon. And we want to thank you as a community for that opportunity for this to happen today.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Jeff Davenport, Jeffdavenport.
All right.
I am Gannon's great uncle. I'm Albert's uncle, and my sister Debbie, who hopefully will be speaking in a few minutes, is his grandmother. Because I am a couple of steps away from him in relation, even though I have personal memories of Gannon and the loving, wonderful young man that he was and the great man he would have been. I want to leave the depth of impact to his parents. So I would like to talk about the breadth of impact. The preciousness of an 11-year-old's life is beyond measure, and all other impacts to all the rest of us pale in comparison to the loss he suffered himself. But this now convicted murderer did not just murder Gannon. She murdered all of the love and joy and encouragement and security he would have brought to all those he encountered throughout his life. She murdered his children and his grandchildren, and all of the joy and love and encouragement and security they would have brought to all those they encountered throughout their life, and so on and so on. She murdered his junior prom, his senior prom, his high school graduation, his college years, his career, his marriage, his retirement, and his golden years, and it just goes on and on. Because of her crime, all of our fragile trust in one another has been further eroded. It's not an exaggeration to say that millions of people throughout the world have heard of this crime and will, as a consequence, be less trusting and more suspicious of those in whose care they entrust their children, even those who have loved and cared for their children for years. And because of her specious, cynical, calculated use of the NGRI defense in this case, those who are truly mentally ill will be treated with more suspicion and may not receive the help that they need. The reverberations of her murder of Gannon will ripple throughout eternity, and the impact of her crime is truly incalculable. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, Your Honor. My name is Landen Bullard, also referred to as Hyatt in this case, but Bullard's B-U-L-L-A-R-D. I miss you, Gannon, and I love you to the moon and back again. I know every day you're with me and your sisters, but that will never be taken away. The ache that I have for you, to hold you, to hug you, to tell you how much I love you, and to see your smile and your innocence. I remember all the pain your dad and I suffered with having children. It was never easy, and we were always fearful through the process. On September the 29th, 2008, our lives were forever changed. Our first biggest blessing came into the world, weighing only 1 pound and 6 ounces. You fought all the odds and developed a personality and a smile that's larger than life. You became my hero that day. You forever changed my heart and my life, and that will never change. That is something that can never be taken away from me. You came into this world fighting. And unfortunately, you left this world fighting. Your Honor, she fought against someone that he loved and trusted. Someone that myself and Albert both trusted and loved. Someone who can never understand what it means to love or trust anyone but herself. For more than 3 agonizing years, I've often wondered what I may say, or if I would even be able to. For 3 years, I have questioned every single possibility and scenario. For 3 years, I have tried to forgive you, but I can't. I want to. But no parent should have to bury their child. No parent should have to see or hear the horrific things you have done. To the whole family, she has taken away the most precious gift in this world. Not just my family, not Al's family, but your own family. She destroyed dozens of lives of people who never wanted to believe that she could have done this. She knew how special Gannon was, and she knew what meant to most to me. I, in my heart, can never understand her hatred and insecurities when it came to me. I did love her. Mother to mother, I trusted her with my children while trying to survive a complicated life with my 3rd child. And you used She used every opportunity to write a narrative of my life to try to take pieces of my life. When she already took some of it, that still wasn't enough. She searched. I lost my place. I don't know where I'm at now. She searched so hard for love when all along she had it, but she took it for granted. I didn't hold anger against you then. I still kept my heart open to her. You had so much love from Laina and Gannon, from Harley, her own daughter, that you willingly subjected to the chance of serving time for her crimes. Such an indicator of her inability to love anyone herself. You had support, appreciation for me, even when we couldn't see eye to eye, because I valued her for helping me with our children when I physically couldn't. Even when I was fighting for my kids, as you wrote, a false smear campaign against me and my children, and also Al. For me, I still appreciated that they were loved by you. So I thought. She had everyone fooled. She projected abuse and addiction claims against all of us, not just me, when all along she was the one harming innocent children. Anything to take the light off, manipulating us, breaking my kids, and murdering my son. I can't say that she ruined my life, because that will be some form of sick victory for her. Because even through this process, it's been a game to her. The people who listened doesn't know her style or her sly jabs. She's even made at Albert and I. They do not know the significance of certain things she says or does. But we do. Instead of allowing her to take that power of hurting me further, I wanted to tell you this. Let me tell you what Gannon has done. Even to this day, even after you murdered him and she tried to taint any positive image of him, he has caused families and communities to come together. Children and adults have given their life to Christ. He has called unity in times of trial. He is a hero. She even tried to steal that away. A cape, huh? The one image of Gannon that was created for the world. After it went national, TV begging for the return of my son, my hero. How dare her? How truly sick and cruel is she? You stole so much from this world. Gannon's cousins, aunts, uncles, sisters, new siblings, grandparents, and friends are missing a huge portion of their lives without Gannon. Laina is missing her brother. Your Honor, I've never seen a bond between two siblings so close as theirs. She had to take that. Why? I'm afraid we may never know that answer, will we? I show his baby sister, Nova, pictures and videos of Gannon so she will always remember who he is, because she stole him from us. He is not forgotten and never will be. And it's so sad to sit here today and face her, a person even Gannon loved, one that I know while she was attacking and killing him and fought for his life, he defended himself against her, still loving her. A love she never deserved from him for what she has done. While she is too much of a coward to even come forward with the truth, she owes it to Gannon. But the lack of remorse and the lack of respect to Gannon through this child, her lack of compassion shows me that we were all wrong. She manipulated all of us and never loved Gannon, Laina, or Harley. I've sat here for over a month having to listen to her sick lies, even as she tried to destroy who I was and Albert as a father. I've had to sit and listen and watch every reenactment of images no one wants left in their mind. You wanted to leave us with that, knowing it would torture us. But you underestimated me. I am Landen, Gannon's mom, and that will never change. Through my hurt, anger, and pain, I will never be the monster that she is. I can never be filled with the hate that her heart holds. I pray that we will never have to look at her face again. I will continue to hold on to my faith, Vengeance is not mine, as I surely wish it could be at times, but it's the Lord's. I have to trust in that. Thank you, Judge Werner, for your compassion, your patience through this trial. I want to thank the juror for their attentiveness and time that they took for justice for my boy, to the detectives, officers, legal team for every single second they've poured out into Gannon's case, and to the community for your countless hours. Tisha, that was her biggest mistake. You underestimated this community and this defensive team, Lorsen Ranch. They searched for and fought for Gannon within hours, and they never believed your lies from the moment they started. None of these people ever gave up on him. You never looked. All of these people I will forever hold close to my heart. Always Gannon strong. My G-men forever. Justice has been served today. Your Honor, I pray that you just give her the best sentencing, the longest sentencing that you can. This will not bring my son back, but I can sleep soundly for the first time in 3 years, knowing that you can never harm, this defendant can never harm anyone again, knowing Gannon will always be a true hero in a cape. He will always be my son. That will never be taken away.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Allen?
Once I was 7 years old, my mama told me, go make yourself some friends or you'll be lonely. Once I was 7 years old. Do, 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 do. It was a big, big world, but we thought we were bigger. Pushing each other to the limits, we were learning quicker.
Laina Stauch, Gannon's father, capital Father. Last name Stauch, Stauch. I'm gonna start with something from my wife, not to go out of order, but she didn't think she could make it through it. So this is my wife, Melissa, and these are her words. Some may say or think that I wouldn't be here if it weren't for Tisha. In part, that may be accurate, and I would be okay with that, because then Gannon would still be here. I too know the pain of losing a child, and there is no greater pain. We are now lifelong grief partners, as this is a lifelong journey of pain, with 2 sons waiting for us in heaven. I have some words from my daughter, Laina. I will address in the middle of my speech, but they're written in yellow, so I don't know if I can leave it to a child. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever God may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of the wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. The poem I read is named Invictus, translated from the Latin means unconquerable. I quoted this same poem at Gannon's memorial here in Colorado Springs back in August of 2020. Why August of 2020? When his body was ripped to shreds on January 27th? Well, as we heard testimony to, his body was found 1,370 miles away. And then the process to identify his maggot-infested remains withheld him from us until July 2020. As I stated in my testimony on the stand, Gannon was born severely premature and barely filled my 2 hands the first time I held him. At the end of his life, after his body was cremated into a pile of ashes, he was ultimately no bigger than the first time I held him. As brutal as the wait became, I'm thankful to God and the bridge workers for finding him and returning his precious body to Landen and I. I quote the poem Invictus again, not to boast of my strength and perseverance, Your Honor, but to say to the world, I alone can control my actions and reactions. Your Honor, I refuse to allow anger to poison my soul and orient my life to a pursuit of vengeance. I refuse to allow pain to carry me through each day and promote the pursuit of medicinal retribution toward the offender. I refuse also to let my mind be clouded by inconsistency and emotions that deter me from the purpose in this life. Your Honor, the price I pay each and every day for this resolve is to only get pieces and parts of my son. Inconsistently through time. But the pain is too heavy and the anger too overwhelming and the desire for vengeance too vexing. Instead, each and every day I pursue peace. I seek joy in my life and let the love I have for my wife and family flow in and out of me like a mighty wave. As I told Tisha regularly at the end of our relationship, my joy is mine alone and she cannot rob me of that. I will learn to experience G more and more as time goes on, but as I did my best to instill into his precious soul, love, joy, service, and kindness are the pathway to take in life. This picture shows that in the 4th grade, he already had a mind for service. Throughout these past 3 years since Gannon was beaten and drugged, carved up, shot at point-blank range and discarded like yesterday's garbage, I've encountered many people that would figuratively do the same to me. I've been questioned, compared as Tisha did to my abusive father, and ridiculed for my approach to finding Gannon. I hope now that the world has seen that I was assigned the most arduous task of finding Gannon in the only place that was possible for him to have been, in the mind of a killer. Were my efforts fruitful? I believe so. But from the moment I did not see the Volkswagen Tiguan, or however you say it, at French Elementary on that Tuesday evening, a clear direction for finding Gannon pointed directly and precisely at Tisha. While others online, some who are even in the courtroom today, questioned my perceived lack of effort or concern, I stood still and stood firm in knowing that only one person had the information needed to find Gannon. Now I say, woe to the person who questions a father's resolve when the safety and well-being of his children are at stake. I did not waver. I did not falter in the pursuit, nor did I allow the mentality of the mob to shake me. But it was only by the grace of God that Gannon's precious body was finally found. In Mark 4:39 of the Bible, in the middle of a storm, Christ arose and rebuked the wind and said, "Peace, be still." In times of trial in my life, from seeing my father being taken away in handcuffs, to seeing that sweet 1 pound, 6 ounce baby boy for my firstborn son being put into a Ziploc bag after he was born to help regulate his body temperature, and now searching for and never finding my son again, I have but one choice, and that is the times of trial and tribulation to have that peace and be still. As I alluded to previously, that stillness does provide an easy target for many who do not understand peace, hope, and even faith. Some, including Tisha, feasted on my stillness, attacked, and yes, left several scars. One of these scars comes in the form of the financial and residential ruin that began in the early days of this ordeal. I'm just going to skip this part because I don't want to make this any more about me. I'm not seeking any restitution, Your Honor. For the $1.50 a month I receive from the defendant, Tisha, would just keep me connected to her for the rest of my life, and I don't want that. So absolutely no restitution, Your Honor. The murderer of which I speak was not always such. When I met Tisha, she was beautiful, extremely intelligent, as many have testified to, and a seemingly successful woman. A far cry from the nappy-headed, murderous, narcissistic, and arrogantly flippant human being that sits in our midst today. Having a background in teaching, social work, higher education, certified babysitting, and endless amount of credentials, that should render one trustworthy when it relates to the safety of children. However, although she remains too much a coward to state the facts of what she did to Gannon, too much a lily-livered, self-centered, pathological liar to ask for forgiveness, and too much the facade of one who actually cares for others to have taken her frustration out on an adult or one who could defend themselves. She will one day give an account through her words or through her time. Sending pictures of Gannon sleeping to Landen and I was telling, as the boy looked pale and absent of the energies that so defined him. This is what a happy, healthy little boy looks like when he's sleeping. The next picture. That's what a little boy sleeping looks like. These pictures on the screen are of a happy, healthy little boy that's sleeping sweetly, healthily where he lay. The impact Tisha had as a result of this heinous crime stretches far wider and far deeper than I could depict through my statement today. 2 other people torn to pieces as a result of this are Gannon's sister, Laina, and Harley. Speaking of Harley, I feel as though I've lost 2 children as a result of this tragedy, one of which I will never see on this earth again, and the other which I do not know if a relationship can be salvaged with. Now for Laina. The video you saw as submitted in evidence, her bebopping down the street, is actually an excellent depiction of Laina and her happiness and her joy in life. She is very loving, trusting, and at times way too social. Normally, you might be concerned by your little girl talking to the utility guy working in the front yard, but in this case, it was the inside of her own home that was of grave concern. Nonetheless, her loss, Laina's loss, is like none I can even imagine. She lost her big brother, her only brother at the time. I still do not know if she has fully processed or fully understands the gravity of the situation, but regardless has pressed forward and is thriving as best as she can. I am so proud of her. And these are her words. Once again, they're in yellow, so I'll do the best I can. And this is what I asked her if she wanted to say anything to Tisha, and this is what she said in her sweetest mind that she has. That you do not do that to people, especially your stepkids. And that it is never all right to do these things. How sweeter of a response can you get? Now for my precious, premature firstborn son. Get it? I never in my wildest dreams would have ever thought you'd be in danger, buddy, or I wouldn't have not left you. At home with what turned out to be your murderer and the last person to ever see you on this earth. I'm so sorry. Through a father's eyes, children are truly a gift from God, and among the best and most perfect creations God can make. Your Honor, I do need to clear one thing up with the defense. It was said both in the opening statement and in the closing, somehow Gannon has been compared to a demon. And I understand the process, I do. But if they want to take the case up of Gannon being a demon, I will line people up from Alaska to Denver to Colorado Springs, all the way to South Carolina to testify against them. Gannon was nobody's demon. I don't care how much anyone was abused or anything. He was not anyone's demon. Oh, okay. Gannon was truly my buddy. Very recently, before he died, the most alarming thing he did was call me dad. Up until age 10 or 11, I was daddy. But in the last months of his life, I was just dad. A signal that he was coming into those junior high, pre-teenage years. Another amazing thing that is he finally started asking me regularly to play ball with him. He was never too much into sports for most of his life, but that last 6 to 9 months, he really started enjoying playing ball. Some of the most memorable times were him running little 5-yard football routes in the street in front of our house. Most of the time he dropped the ball, but he kept asking, let's do it again. I almost had it that time, Daddy. Oh, and that Nintendo Switch. One of the most difficult pieces of evidence to give up was his Nintendo, because that probably has the most of him on it. Knowing I may never see that again is truly devastating. For him, many of his games were not just games, but a challenge to overcome, as I made him beat specific games before I would buy him the next one. I remember not long before he died, him beating the old school Zelda game he had. As he felt he was getting close to beating the final monster, he paused it, ran upstairs, and we sat at the kitchen island, and he beat it right there together with me. He was as excited as I ever saw him. With all of that and all of the pain of only being able to see him play through the one YouTube video he was able to make, which I'm about to play, I can sleep in peace at night because the father I am and the son he is was culminated as always in our final embrace as he ran out of arms and downstairs to watch Pokemon, I in his heart and he in mine. If we could try to play that video, just maybe the first 10 or 15 seconds of it.
Hey guys, and today I'm about to play some Sonic Mania.
Alright, let's zoom in.
And yes, cameraman is right here. Derpa Star White Gaming. And yes, sign up for our channels. We're going to be doing a lot of these together. Give a shout out to him, his channel, Freedom.
Thank you. I was one of the many he hoped to make and the only one he was actually able to make. I do want to add something that I don't have in my speech that me and Landon already had a conversation about this, and I owe her an apology as well as she already gave me one, that we allowed Tisha to manipulate us into some of the pain and disagreements that we had between one another. And Landon, I'm sorry. But I will say this, Tisha was not the glue to keep everything together. She was not the answer. And this is not a jab, Landon, okay? But Laina still lives with me. Tisha, you were not the answer. Now, Your Honor, if I have any influence on the final sentence for Tisha, first I ask to be stripped of my last name immediately. It's nauseating and infuriating to hear her called Miss Stauch this past 3 years. Secondly, I ask that for every mile she drove Gannon across the country, she spent 1 day in solitary confinement. I think that take us in between 3 and 4 years. After that journey is complete, I recommend her sentence be equal to every year she stripped off of Gannon's life, which for the average male in America right now is 77. So that would give her 66 more years in addition to the 11 he lived. Lastly, for every year of Harley's life that she abusively manipulated that child, she should have an additional year of prison. That adds 21 years to the total. I think without parole, that should suffice. I pray also that Tisha lives the fullest and happiest life that any inmate possibly can live. I also pray that every night before she falls asleep, her last breath before she drifts off sounds just like the breath that she describes Gannon breathing as life left his body. And that all through her sleep, she dreams of all the fun they had at Disney and other places we went throughout our time together. And that every morning as she is about to wake, the end of her dream, the last words Gannon spoke to her, screamed or cried, "Tisha, stop! You're hurting me. Why, Tisha? Daddy, help me. I want my mommy. Why couldn't you let her just be a mama's boy? That's all he wanted to be. He just loved his mama. I wish she would tell me what those words were so I would know." And then as she speaks those words, the sound of a gunshot goes off and she wakes. Every day and night, I pray she relives just those moments and then wakes up to a nice, warm, and kosher breakfast. In conclusion, I would like to share a picture of Gannon in his final state and find a resting place, and thank everyone that has had a positive impact on my family and I. To everyone that has shared the positive impact Gannon has had on your life, from a proud and broken father, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. I'd like to pause until we can get that last photo up.
Not getting a feed from your laptop. It's fine. Oh, there it is.
Thank you, everyone.
Alan?
I think that concludes the comments from family and friends, Judge. So I'm not sure if you're ready to hear sentencing comments from me or if you want to do a different process.
Let me hear the sentencing comments from you. The last person that I always hear from in a sentencing is the defendant. So
Okay. Can I have just a moment, Judge?
you may go ahead.
Judge, on count one and count two merges into count one. The only sentence available is life in prison without parole. As to count four, tampering with a deceased human body, driving Gannon's body over 1,300 miles away, hiding it from view, hoping it would never be found. Ask for the maximum sentence of 12 years, Judge, and that it be running consecutive to the life in prison without parole. Tampering with physical evidence is an F6. It's 1 to 1.5 years. I ask that you give max on that as well and run that consecutive. Judge, we do have that other pending case, 20 CR 3170, hanging out there. In the grand scheme of things, well, I'd love to prosecute this defendant for that charge as well. In the interest of justice, I would like to see this defendant in Department of Corrections custody as soon as possible. And so we are dismissing that count or that charge. Thank you, Judge.
All right, at this point in time, the defense has an opportunity to present statements in mitigation. Mr. Tolini?
We understand what sentence is as a matter of law. It's out on some counsel. I don't have pre-sentence confinement or staff that she ordered that she be allowed to proceed in.
Give me an order.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Ms. Stauch, I heard what your attorney had to say, but I need to hear it from you. You have a right to address the court at this point in time regarding any matter that you want me to consider for sentencing. Do you have anything that you wish for me to consider, ma'am? All right.
Actually, there is.
Go ahead.
Or consider this or request to admit, reflect a request for her to be placed in San Carlos.
I don't have the ability to do that. DOC determines where its inmates go, and I'm not going to make a recommendation one way or the other. And I'm going to apologize before I do this. I've heard a lot. I want to take about 10 minutes to put my thoughts in order. I'll come back with my sentencing at 3:25.
All rise.
A parent's worst nightmare is getting a phone call letting them know that something has happened to their child. How much worse must that nightmare be when law enforcement asks not for a picture of your loved one, but rather DNA and dental records? I've also heard it said that one of the worst tragedies a parent can experience is to outlive a child. I have known people, both professionally and personally, who have gone through that. It never leaves them, but the sharpness of the pain does diminish to some extent over time. I cannot fathom the pain Mr. Stauch and Ms. Bullard have experienced as a result of the defendant's actions. A sentence in a criminal case such as this will not change the fact that their son's life was taken from them, and no sentence I impose and nothing I say will ever change that fact. Ms. Stauch, you betrayed the person you loved enough to marry. You told your husband lies and took away someone he loved. You took away every day that Mr. Stauch or Ms. Bullard could have had with their son. When you take a life, regardless of how you do that, you forever alter the future. Neither Mr. Stauch nor Ms. Bullard will ever see their son graduate from high school, go through the joy and the pain of that first love, or get married. They will never know what kind of impact their son may have had on the world if only he had lived to become an adult. And had Gannon's body not been found, they never would have known what happened to Gannon. They would always have had a lingering doubt about what happened to Gannon. And I cannot imagine the pain and sense of loss associated with that. You betrayed your daughter, Harley Hunt. I cannot imagine the emotional impact that you have had on her due to your selfish and calculated actions. This is a young woman that trusted you to put her interests above yours. This is a young woman who believed in you and believed you were innocent of this crime right up until the time that you pled not guilty by reason of insanity. And she still loves you. That's natural for a child, and it doesn't matter how much older they get. You were supposed to protect her. I cannot imagine the guilt she feels or the therapy that she will need to address your betrayal. There is no evidence that she had anything to do with the murder or your cover-up of it. But some people still think that she is somehow involved. She wasn't. The incredible strength of will and courage that it took for her to come in and testify is amazing to me. But she did it because, as she said, it was the right thing to do. And while thankfully she didn't testify, let's not forget about Laina. You betrayed her too. You took her brother from her and forever altered her family dynamics. She will always wonder who she can trust and will always feel that loss. She was there the day you killed Gannon. His body was still in the house when she got back from school. At some point, you even claimed this 8-year-old girl helped you move her brother's body from the basement to the back of your car. That's just simply not true. As she gets older, Laina is going to want to know more, and she's going to want to know if there was something that she could have done to prevent this. I hope she comes to realize that she has no fault in all of this. You betrayed your stepson and you took his life. You took away everything he was and everything he could ever become. I can't imagine the terror and confusion that he must have felt in the last moments of his life when he knew his life was being taken by someone he trusted to protect it. Your attempt to raise the claim that you did this because of your adverse childhood is also a betrayal of people that have mental health issues. It is no secret that there is a large part of our population that has mental health issues. It's also no secret that our country and our health system could do a much better job addressing mental health issues than it does. However, the number of people with mental health issues who become violent is small, and the number who become murderers is smaller still. Your claim that a mental health issue caused the murder in this case is a disservice to all those who struggle with mental health issues every day. This isn't the first case I have presided over in which sanity or a mental condition of the defendant has been raised as a defense. I have had cases where the defendant's mental condition caused the defendant to act out in a certain fashion. But even in those cases, I have never seen conduct like this. I understand the claim of dissociative identity disorder. I have seen something resembling that, and I have seen defendants with schizophrenic disorders. I can understand those. What I have seen is that the mental condition causes the person to act a certain way, and when they realize what they did, they are astonished by what happened, or they have no memory of what happened. Your claim is that it was another personality that murdered Gannon, but there is no time during the minutes, hours, and days following the murder where Letecia came out and wondered, gee, why am I carrying a body around in my luggage? That just isn't credible. You knew what you were doing. You made a number of clear and conscious decisions to cover or disguise what you had done. Claiming a lack of motive is a common defense tactic, and it can be a sound strategy. The truth is, however, that it only takes a moment to make a bad decision that results in disastrous consequences. And oftentimes, we never know why a defendant chose a particular course of action. However, that does not mean that they did not intend to undertake a course of action. Sometimes, as in this case, the likely explanation is anger. An 11-year-old boy with burns who feels that he's not being taken care of. An 11-year-old boy on the verge of being a teenager. Those of us who have lived through people or kids that were teenagers, we know how that is. It is not hard to imagine Gannon saying something, "You're not my mom. I want my mom. I want my dad." And that would be enough to make you really angry. But anger is not an excuse. A defendant is responsible for the choices they made and the actions they undertook, even though those choices arose out of or were motivated by anger. It's clear that you hated and were jealous of Landen Bullard. You saw yourself as a better mother than she was. It's clear from the evidence that you had some resentment from being left with Mr. Stauch's children. It's clear you had some resentment toward Mr. Stauch because he traveled as part of his job. Some of that manifested as early as Al's assignment in Alaska when you made allegations against the people in his unit. That caused Al to have to return from Alaska. And in one of the phone calls that were played for the jury, you talked about having to take care of his kids while he was away and what a good mother you were. It's clear you felt trapped. You wanted out. You were searching for a new job and a new location in Florida. Mr. Stauch had been gone on his new assignment for less than 2 days when the fire in the basement occurred. I can imagine that you saw your whole future consisting of taking care of Mr. Stauch's children while he was off doing his thing And that's not the future that you wanted. I can imagine Gannon, at some point after he sustained his burns, telling you wanted his real mom and how that comment would have made you angry. You took your frustration and anger for the marriage, the child care, the absence of Al, and even living in Colorado. You took all of that out on Gannon. The evidence suggests you first stabbed Gannon repeatedly, 18 times. Based on the number of defensive wounds, he was clearly conscious for some of that. He was certainly gravely wounded. And chillingly, it would also explain how you were able to mimic the sound of Gannon breathing in one of your sessions with Dr. Lewis. Those were probably close to his last breaths. He was dying but not dead. The evidence could also lead one to conclude that he either fell or rolled off the bed where you shot him in the head and then beat him with the butt of a gun or a baseball bat. That would explain the blood found at different levels on the walls in Gannon's bedroom. I'm also reminded of the look you had on your face when you slipped your handcuffs while being transported back to Colorado and attacked Deputy James. I shudder to think that that was probably the last thing that Gannon saw before he died. You have shown no remorse throughout this process. Instead, you've made a choice to build a web of lies. When you gave an interview to Detective Jessica Bethel on January 29 of 2020, you told her you lied to her about Gannon running away and that he was actually taken by a guy named Eduardo. When you explained that to Detective Bethel, you said you needed to lie because you didn't want to face the consequences. You told her that you were trying to come up with a plan about what you should do. And finally, you told her you really thought you could fix this. I think that's true. You lied because you didn't want to face the consequences. You needed to come up with a plan to fix this, and that plan involved covering up what you had done. It involved lie upon lie. But you slipped up at various points and let kernels of truth escape. In one conversation with Mr. Stauch, you told him the FBI needed to close the borders of Colorado and needed to close I-95. I-95 doesn't go through Colorado. It's an interstate that runs along the entire eastern seaboard. It's also not far from where you dumped Gannon's body. When questioned by Detective Bethel, you told her that Mr. Stauch might also make up some kind of story about you coming at him with a knife. You said you would never use a knife like that. Yet Gannon was stabbed 18 times. Your actions in this case also show a very conscious attempt to avoid responsibility in this case. You started out with the story that Gannon had run away. You gave some hints that it might be related to bath salts or drug use by Gannon. You stayed with that story until you were called into EPSO for an interview. You knew they weren't going to buy the story that Gannon ran away. Then you came up with the abduction. And you stayed with some iteration of that for a long time. But all of those versions had one thing in common. You were always the victim. In one, you're beaten and raped and Gannon was abducted. In one, someone stole Gannon out of a truck in the parking lot. In another, you let someone drive Gannon to a hospital to take care of a head injury that he had after falling off a bike. In all of them, you could claim it wasn't your fault. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Then you got arrested. You stuck to the story that it was someone else that took Gannon. During the hours that you spoke with Special Agent Grusing, he told you he thought sometimes good people do bad things and sometimes it's an accident. Then they found Gannon's body. Then you saw the mountain of evidence against you. And this is a mountain the size of Everest. What was your position after that? Well, it was an accident. And you, Letecia, didn't even do it. It was Maria Sanchez. You carefully crafted your new story to continue to avoid responsibility. It also allowed you to take advantage of the out that Mr. Grusing and Mr. Stauch suggested much, much earlier when they asked you if this was an accident. Now it was an accident. Your Maria Sanchez personality shot Gannon by mistake because she thought he was an intruder in a cape. Multiple personalities is not credible in this setting, as regardless of how many personalities you have, you only have one body. I have presided over cases where a mental disease or defect prevented a defendant from remembering the course of events, including the commission of the crime. Without exception, those defendants have been terrified when contacted by law enforcement because there was a period of time in their lives that they could not account for. Their body may have sustained an injury, and they don't know how it happened. They may have some new object in their house or on their person, and they have no idea where they got it from. We all have free will, and we all make choices based on that free will. The people who suffer from the mental disorder you claim are terrified because their free will has been taken from them, and they are being subjected to things and experiences they don't understand and don't have any recollection of. You didn't behave anything like that. One of the purposes is to impose an appropriate sentence for the criminal conduct that occurred. Another purpose is to punish an offender by imposing a sentence that takes into account the seriousness of the offense. Yet another purpose of sentencing is to prevent crime and promote respect for the law by providing an effective deterrent to others likely to commit a similar offense. Anyone who's been in my courtroom before knows that I've said sentencings are the most difficult thing that I do. That's especially true in cases where someone has lost his or her life. Nothing I or the law can do will ever bring that person back. I have handled hundreds, if not thousands, of criminal cases over the years. I think at this point in my career, I've presided over something like 200 jury trials. I've sentenced hundreds more defendants pursuant to plea agreements. This is not the first murder case that has come before me. This is not the first case I have presided over which involves harm to a child. This is not the first case I have had where a person who was in an unhappy marriage committed a crime. Sadly, statistically, there is a high correlation between violent acts, including murders, and family members. I have had a number of cases which have demonstrated one person's capacity for cruelty toward another human being. I can, however, say without hesitation that the facts in this case are the most horrific I have ever seen. Your conduct in this case deserves the maximum punishment that I can impose under Colorado law. As such, with respect to the charge of first-degree murder after deliberation, I remand you to the custody of the Colorado Department of Corrections for the remainder of your life with no possibility of parole. With respect to the charge of murder in the first degree of a child under 12 by a person in a position of trust, I remand you to the custody of the Colorado Department of Corrections for the remainder of your life with no possibility of parole. Those two sentences will merge. If you have questions about that, you can ask your attorneys. With respect to the charge of tampering with a deceased human body, I'm also going to sentence you to 12 years, followed by a 3-year period of parole. That sentence is to be consecutive to the life sentences that I've already imposed. With respect to tampering with physical evidence, I'm going to impose an 18-month sentence. That sentence is also consecutive to the sentences for the murder charges that I have imposed. I also understand, with the consent of the prosecution, and I'm assuming no objection from the defense, that I will dismiss all the charges in 20 CR 3170, close that out, subject to restitution, give the people 49 days for restitution, 14 days for response, and if there's an issue, we will set it within the 90 days, from. I think that resolves all outstanding matters. Is there anything else that the prosecution wishes for me to address?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Defense? Court will be in recess.
There's a lot of challenges in this case. This case is pretty hard and grueling on everybody involved. But in the end, I feel proud to have stood up there and tried my best to defend her.
Josh, can I ask you about the decision to go after this as a DID case versus what you emphasize more in your closing argument about this being a psychotic break? Do you think that was confusing for the jury, and would it have been possible to just limit it to the psychotic break that I know you talked a lot about?
You know, I that's a good question. You know, in the end, it was hard for me to know exactly what it was. But always with this case, nothing made sense to me other than some type of psychotic break. And DID and the psychotic break weren't mutually, they were kind of the same thing. It was a psychotic break, and then the DID was explaining her actions afterwards. And you do suffer psychotic breaks if you have dissociative identity disorder. So it wasn't that I was discounting that, it was trying to open it up more. So whether it was a severe borderline personality disorder or whether it was DID, the emphasis was, to me, it seemed the only explanation that I could conceive of that made sense to me was some type of psychotic break. And again, I think the jury thought a lot about that, gave it some consideration. I understand, you know, their decision, and I can respect their decision.
After nearly 8 hours of deliberations, a Colorado jury found the 39-year-old guilty of all counts, including first-degree murder in connection to the death of her 11-year-old stepson.
Stauch was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, with another 12 years tacked on for tampering with a deceased body. Joining us now is Letecia Stauch's defense attorney, Josh Tolini. Josh, thank you so much for joining us today. We truly appreciate it. First and foremost, I do want to commend you on what I consider to be a fantastic job on a very difficult case. So I do want to say that by starting off. And then I want to ask you what your response or reaction to the verdict was. It certainly couldn't have come as a surprise.
Well, first off, thank you very much for those kind words. I would not say that the verdict was a complete surprise. There was a substantial amount of evidence that we had to overcome. Not guilty by reason of insanity is a very high bar in the state of Colorado. Ms. Stauch's actions afterwards made getting over that bar very difficult. I think the jury considered the mental illness quite a bit. I think that's the reason why they were out nearly 8 hours looking over the mental illness. I don't think there was any real doubt within the jury's mind that she had a mental illness, but in the end, they came to the conclusion that it didn't reach the high bar of not guilty by reason of insanity in the state of Colorado. And while I'm disappointed, I can understand and respect their decision.
And I think that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is that 8-hour deliberation, and really a congratulations to a defense team, because some people might think after hearing the evidence, it's a conviction within moments. It's going to be quick, but I agree with you. First of all, I believe in our jury system, but second of all, I think that they absolutely put a lot of weight on the expert that you presented for the insanity defense with the DID to really take that into account. So what is next for you, for your client, in terms of how that's going to be handled now that the conviction has been determined by this jury?
Well, Ms. Stauch is still in the El Paso County Jail. She will then go up to Denver to what's called DRDC. They will process her and determine what facility she will then be placed in. As for myself, we will start working on the appeal. I'll fill out a kind of what's called an appellate packet that will be sent on to the state office. They'll assign an appellate attorney to take over the appeal from point forward.
Josh, I want to ask you about Letecia Stauch. I mean, we heard a lot from her during the trial, but I think those were extenuating circumstances, let's call it. What was it like dealing with her as a client on a day-to-day basis? What can you tell us about her?
Well, like everybody else, she has good days and bad days. There were a lot of aspects on her where she would display kindness, where she would have a sincere emotions towards all of the people involved. I think she really struggled with this whole case. I still think she is struggling to accept herself, what she did. I think there's part of her that can't accept that she committed this horrible act, and I think that is the reason that explains a lot of her actions afterwards. I think there is part of her that to reconcile those two things would almost destroy her, and I think that's what led to a lot of the lies and deceit afterwards, and at some points made her a challenging client to kind of work with.
I know what I believe the reason and the passion that defense attorneys have and why they represent clients. But this is a client that, you know, the public loves to hate simply because of the horrible crime that was committed. But tell viewers, tell us all about the meaning of being a defense attorney and why you do it, because I'll tell anybody, it protects all our rights. It's not about that one defendant, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I've always been a criminal defense attorney. I started out in the public defender's office here in the state of Colorado. I was there for about 4 years. Since then, I've been with a different organizations called Alternative Defense Council, which comes in when there's a conflict with the public defender's office, and we're a different state agency. But I firmly believe in defending individuals accused of crimes. I firmly believe that no matter what somebody has done, they deserve somebody sitting beside them, fighting for them, and especially in this type of case where it seems that the world is against them. Those are the type of cases where I think it's most important for defense attorneys to step up, and no matter what the odds, no matter what is going on, to fight as hard as they can for that client, because I think that's what everybody deserves at the end of the day.
All right, absolutely.
And you gave her a vigorous defense. Everyone deserves a vigorous and zealous defense, and you absolutely gave her that. Thank you so much for joining us there, Josh.
Well, thank you very
Josh.
much. Thank you.
All right.
Great to hear directly from them, because again, I know people say we don't like defense attorneys. How can they represent that person? Well, because it's protecting constitutional rights, not only of that person, but all of us.
And look, she had a right to have that defense presented.
Yes.
There's certainly something going on. To what level it rose, did it rise to the level of insanity? That was for a jury to decide, and they did.
Absolutely.
Did you see that the DA had made?
Oh, he made this. Wow.
Yeah.
That's special. Did they give this to you today?
They gave it to me last week, so I've just been carrying it with me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That must have been a lot.
It does.
Landen, we are just hours out from the verdict that you've been waiting for 3 years for. What are you feeling right now?
It's a lot of emotions. Happiness, obviously, and the joy that comes along with it. But I also have a feel of emptiness still. It's just you have so many people here and so much support, and just to know that you're per se not normal life, but going back into that transition of your work and all of that, it's bittersweet, but it's also a triumph, it's a victory. So I'm just gonna take that with happiness. It's a big present, a gift to so many people other than myself, if that makes sense. And I'm very thankful, extremely so happy.
I'm sure you had anticipated this outcome or prayed a lot on it, but to hear it today, what was that feeling?
Peace. Because all I found was peace. For more than 3 years, I've struggled. You try to put puzzle pieces together of what makes sense, and no matter how hard you try to make sense of it, it never made sense to me. But to hear that the verdict today, guilty, made more sense to me. Knowing that that person is going to spend the rest of her life behind bars, it's words that I've been waiting to hear for a very long time.
Hearing the judge tell her straight out, you were jealous of Gannon's biological mom, and that he didn't believe her case. When he said your name and talked to her like that, what was that feeling for you?
First of all, I couldn't consider her a mom, just for the things that she did, and just sitting there with no remorse, no empathy. And for him, the judge, Judge Werner, to say those words and to basically to tell the story from his perspective and his professionalism just gave me the fulfilling of grace, gave me a fulfilling of my faith has been fulfilled. It instilled a little more trust because I've lost so much trust in this whole process. But just hearing him say and to tell the story from his perspective, I don't think we could have had a better judge. He done wonderful. And to be there and to hear everything that we've had to hear, I think he was very compassionate as well. And I take that as a blessing.
You've had to hear a lot. 5 weeks of the worst possible things being talked about with your son, with this person that is now convicted of murdering him. Was there a moment that was extremely hard, a harder part than others?
Yeah, there's two in particular that I can't get rid of. One of which is the video where he says, "Pinky promise." That's all I hear is "Pinky promise." And then the other is when she imitates his last breath. That really got to me. I think that was a huge jab, and it just shows you how evil a person could be. That also made me aware of more signs because I try to take people as good people, and that's a flaw. I also think it's a gift because some people, you don't never know what they go through, and you can try to help them, if that makes sense. But with her, Tisha, there is no help. There was never any help. So those two things I don't ever think could ever go out of my mind. But to have the verdict of guilty, it puts a little bit of comfort on top of it. But those two things just stick out more than anything.
They haunt you.
Yeah, they haunt me.
Being in the room with her for 5 weeks after 3 years of waiting, that must have been tough.
Yeah, it was real tough. You have to look at that person. And she's made eye contact with me a few times, and then it's just like it burns my soul. Like it just like, how can you even look at me? How can you even look at anybody in the family? Knowing what you did and you still can't admit it is just, she is the definition of coward and evil in my eyes. And the sad thing, 18 stab wounds, 4 blunt force to the head, a gunshot, all of that, Gannon still loved her, I believe, in his last breath, because that's who he is. And I don't want to try to be a biased mom, but my son was different, very different, and she took advantage of it. And she was blessed to even have him in her life.
They talked about how she texted you in those days, the day that he disappeared from his phone. At that point, did you have trust in her?
I trusted her. She was supposed to pick me up at the airport. She was supposed to pick me up at the airport. Little did I know my son's body was in a car in that same airport. Yeah, I was totally blindsided by it all. It was all, great, let's get here. Let's look for Gannon. And when I got there, there was no Tisha. And then even before I left, I felt like something was off with her. And then when I got here, it just really put the bow on top. It's just like, she is the person. And it destroyed me.
To think she did something.
Absolutely. I would have never imagined. I would have never imagined at 11 o'clock my time, a little bit at 11 o'clock on the 27th, I had to wake up from a phone call saying that my son is missing. I know exactly where I was that day. And that's another thing that will never go away is you called me. You're telling me that my son is okay. You're supposed to pick me up at the airport. You're supposed to look for my son, and you never did. And the sad thing is, I think that's what took my son's life, is the hate that she had. Nobody should have that amount of hate whatsoever, none. And she is the epitome of evil.
She searched hating your son.
Gannon has told me before how much he loved her. And for her to even compare his name to the word hate bothers me, because there's not a bone in his body that describes hate. And for her to even say that just kind of depicts of who she really is as a person. And we were all blindsided by it. And that's something that I will forever hold in my heart. It is guilt, in a sense. It's that, why did this ever happen? January the 7th, the last time I seen my son, I should have just grabbed him out of that airplane tunnel. But I couldn't. I didn't know any of this was going to happen. So, but today we got justice.
Yeah. When she did this not guilty by reason of insanity plea, how does that feel for you?
It's a slap in the face. I've known her, gosh, I think a little bit even longer than I've known Albert. Like, we coach, we play ball together, and to say insanity as all of her life she's said, I'm this person, I'm so great. I don't even know what's true anymore, to be honest with you, because I trusted her. I befriended her. I loved her. And that is the definition of ultimate betrayal. She is a mother. I can't even say that. She's not a mother. She should not even get that definition, but there's more people that are suffering because of this. And you can't show empathy even when your daughter's there. So it's sickening to me.
Did you want to hear from her today in the courtroom?
I wanted to, but I knew I wouldn't. Like, I've prepared myself for 3 years to understand that she will never tell us. And I know that I will probably live this life never knowing. And that's something that I have to carry with me. And I've accepted that. And I'm very blessed that my Lord and Savior can give me some form of peace when it comes to that. So.
Peace, it seems probably like it's felt impossible after 3 years of what you've been through. So many delays, losing your son, all of this. What does peace feel like today?
You can breathe. You can wake up, like I feel like I can wake up tomorrow knowing that my son had a life that is valuable. Not only to me, but to so many other people that are in this community, that I can sleep knowing that justice is served. And so many people put so many hours into this, that my son's not just a piece of paper. He's a person. And it has been portrayed by every individual, from my family, from people on the defense team, to people on the prosecution. And I'll have to say this, the lawyer, I can't pronounce his name, but Tisha's one that starts with a T. Tolini. He even today stopped me outside and gave me words of compassion. And that had to be something hard for him to do, but for someone like that to have compassion, and the person that you're defending to not have compassion, I feel bad for him. I do. So peace is a big word. I know that my family, my aunt, my mother, my nephews, his friends, his teacher, his parents, his family, everybody involved knows that it's done. That little boy Blue, my hero, G-Man, Gannon, had a voice. He has a story, and it's been told. And peace comes from that, because we have victory today. And I only had that peace one other time, and I call it peace that passes all understanding, is when I was on the road to Florence, South Carolina. Albert was driving, and I sat there. After 4 years from that, or 3 years from that, I'd lost a child, and I prayed. And I had a heat that went from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet and said, it's going to be okay. And for the second time in my life today, I have that feeling that it's going to be okay, that the Lord answered the prayers. And there were too many signs in this case that God was involved. And I'm very thankful for that.
His body being found.
He could have went a day before, 2 months before. Like, he could have just left, but for him to be in that bridge working on that, that was divine intervention. You can't tell me there's not a God or a higher being, period. And that has, amongst other things, that is one thing that has really made that significant for me, is through my son.
Without that, them finding your son, which I can't imagine how painful it has been having him in the courtroom in a box. But without that, you might not be here today.
Yeah, because you'd still be holding on to hope. I have a church friend back home. He went missing at sea, and they haven't found his body. And his wife just had a baby. And to know that a body, unfortunately, we have to say, that has not been found, a family is going to hold on peace thinking that you're going to walk through that door. And that's a pain, 3 years, that's going to last an eternity. And I'm thankful for that, because it answered a lot of the questions that we would have never known. And it's awful. By God, it's awful. Like, who can disrespect someone so much to drive on the side of a bridge, to throw someone off? That's just sickening to me. Like, how can anybody comprehend that? Like, I can't get it. But I'm blessed.
I think you said something really important today. You've said it to me maybe 3 years ago when we chatted, that this young boy in 11 years in his life has impacted and done so much more than most of us could ever do.
Absolutely. That's another way I find peace, is Gannon at 11 years old has done more things in his short life than a lot of us ever will. Like, I've had letters from all over the world, classmates, parents, family, that have wrote letters saying that I'm so thankful I've never met your son, but I'm thankful that I have met him, because now I value family. I can look for signs. I'll take every little memory as it comes, capture every moment, and just to take a smile as a smile. And Gannon had that. So much love. Like I said earlier, he is my hero. And from the day that he was born, he became my hero, and he fulfilled that cape very well through many people's life, not just mine. And I didn't know this until the case, and this is how I feel like the Lord works, is he plants seeds. And this is just a seed that is planted that I feel like that is going to continue to bloom for the rest of our life, in the name of Gannon and the great deeds that he's done, and the community. When I tell you, at a drop of a dime, a community, a state, a city came together, I cannot embellish that. Like, I'm still like in awe of people coming together, and it's heartwarming.
It's truly special.
And he did that.
He did. There's a lot of things that people probably don't understand, not being in your shoes, going through the past 3 years, going through this trial. I'm sure you have learned a lot that you never wanted to learn. Enlighten us. You know, what have you been going through? You didn't even know some of the things at first, right?
None of it. A lot of it I didn't know. But that comes with the case. If people go through this, I would urge you to listen, because you're kind of forced to stay quiet in a sense, because that could jeopardize everything. And being a mom or even a family member, the only thing that you want to do is just get it out. And that's hard. 3 years, you just have to sit here and you hear awful things. People talk. What I've learned to know is the people that care for you, they know who you are. You don't have to explain yourself. And that's for anybody in general, is that be yourself, love your family. Stay close to the ones that love you. Fight like hell. Don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. Hold strength as long as you can hold it. When you feel like you're giving up, just pray harder. Reach out to the people that love you, because it's hard being alone. And I can say during this whole process that I've had a community and family and church people that have came together. In this 3 years, I don't think it would have been a lot worse, but to have the good people, even including yourself, you've been here since the very beginning. And those 3 years it's been awful. You have people asking you questions. I have my 4-year-old that is asking me questions. She asks me questions like an adult, and sometimes you don't have the answers. And the only thing that you can do is move forward, do the best that you can. I'm a hear his story, but the 3 years it's been awful. Every day is like you're reliving that first day. Some days are worse than others, and then some days it's like a roller coaster. It starts all over again. But I'm thankful, and I'm hoping something with Gannon's name that other people don't have to go through the things that you go through when you lose someone that you love, especially a child. And through this, I hope that there's something that can be done.
A law change or something.
Absolutely. Children are our future, and sometimes we tend to forget that we get more focused on our daily lives and we forget about the innocence that we have right in front of us. And I'm very thankful, for sure. Gannon, Laina, and Nova has taught me more than anything in the last 3 years, and that has given me the peace that I need, along from the support that I've had from very close friends, Janie, Sarah, my Aunt Veronica. 1,195 days till we've waited. It's a long time. Nobody should carry that pain, period. And sometimes you just wake up and you're like, this never happened, and then just reality steps in. But having the judgment today that she's guilty can give me some better thoughts.
Do you think it will end that cycle, that nightmare every day, or do you think it'll just make it a bit easier?
I think it'll make it easier, for sure. There's never going to be a moment that goes by that I just wish he would walk through the door. I long for that, but just to know that today is the day out of these 3 agonizing years that my son has justice. And without a shadow of a doubt, I know that he is happy. I can see that smile. And that's something that I haven't been able to see. It's like I see the pictures, but it just tears me up. I can see that smile today. And it gives me the relief, for sure.
There's so many things for 3 years that you probably wanted to say, but you couldn't. What would you want to say to Letecia that you weren't able to?
My human side comes out. That's hard. If I could say things to her, I think I've said a lot of it in my statement today. But if she had a drop of love that Gannon had, she wouldn't be sitting there today. And if I could tell her anything, it would be that she needs to get her life right. She needs to speak up. She needs to let everybody else know what they deserve. They deserve to know the reason. I may never know the reason, but she needs to speak up. And if she never speaks up, I know that justice has been served today. And if I look her in my eyes, I can't tell you that I can look her in the eyes without me getting up and handle it myself. That's just human. But I have got to know that the Lord is going to take care of her, and that it says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And I've got to trust in that. Because me being human, I couldn't sit in a courtroom for 6+ weeks without God, without my family, with a person sitting less than 10 yards away from me. I would just ask her why, over and over and over. And I still don't think I'd get the answer, though. So I have to leave today knowing, and I'm okay with it, that I may never see her face again, that I'll see my son smile, knowing confidently that this community worked hard, the DA worked hard to convict her, and I'm happy.
I can't even imagine getting up today, talking in front of her, talking to your son, addressing her, the judge. That must have been hard.
It was awful. I woke up this morning, I remember telling them I was shaking. We got the phone call that saying, hey, we need to hurry up and get to the court. And it was kind of a surreal moment. You're like, this is really going to happen. And then you know it's going to be 50-50. Which way is it going to be? And I had confidence that we were going to hear what we hear today. But waiting, that's brutal. It's hard. And with composure, the only thing I can say it's for Gannon. I would not be able to get his story out. Am I hurting? There's times that nobody sees me. And I'm letting it all out. Because he deserves my strength. He deserves my love that he will always get. He deserves his story told the right way. And that's the only way that I can tell it. And I do believe and I know in my heart that he has been with me every step of the way. This is how he would want me to act. A while ago when you just asked me the question, what would I do if Tisha was sitting in front of me? I had to revert to what would Gannon want me to do. That's what Gannon would want me to do. And I believe that.
If people could take away something from Gannon's story or what you think Gannon would want people to know, what is that?
Love. Love. No matter what. Love took him out of this world. If we can have just a drop of love that Gannon had, this world would change. You wouldn't hear about some of the things that we hear about on the news stations. We wouldn't be hearing the story that we're hearing today if we just had that love. And that word is in caps lock. Like it's imminent, like it's important. It's important for you to tell others that you love them. When you wake up, make sure you tell the people that you love them, because that word, the meaning, it can go a long way. Some people can just be holding on to just a little bit of hope. And that 4-letter word, love, can change your life. And that's all that I know. Sometimes I'm a little naive, if that makes sense, but I try to love. And that it's hard to love it sometimes, but once you disperse the love, it becomes contagious, and Gannon has done that.
How are you feeling today, 2 days later?
It's still a little heavy, just kind of a wave of emotions as it has been. So just riding the wave.
I'm sure that's gonna last probably forever.
Sure, yeah.
How do you feel after hearing that sentence, hearing the verdict?
It's good. It's for me. It's just finalizing. We hoped and kind of expected that. You never know, as that's why we go through the process to make sure it's right and it's done appropriately. But for me, it's finally, that piece of the pie is finally over, and we can move forward into what's next for us. Just having our family and growing together, and just loving our boys and remembering them, and just dealing with the emotions as they come.
You've been 3 years through agony, and then this trial was pretty long, 5 weeks of testimony. What was that like for you, being in that courtroom every day?
But for me, it was there were bits and pieces that were very impactful. I think to a few things. One was the very beginning when I got the message from Tisha, actually, that they were requesting dental records. And if you reflect on what the judge said in his closing, I mean, that was eye-opening for me and alarming and gut-wrenching from the very moment it started. And then moving on, just learning. I knew a lot of the case just from being involved in those calls and whatnot, but there was so much I learned throughout the case that was, it was emotional and kind of riding the wave again. But I did also try to be objective as I sat there and listened, because like I just said, you never know. We never knew what to expect, how the jury was reacting, and what their decision would ultimately be. So having that objective approach, I just wanted to be prepared for whatever was to come. We were confident in that the result would be what it ended up being. But you got to kind of have that preparation for the worst. So,
Of course. Being in the courtroom with her there for as long as this trial was, what was that like for you?
It was not as emotional as you might think. I think I hesitate to say move on from Gannon. I moved forward from those circumstances, but I moved on from her. And I think if you heard my statement, I want to be totally separated from her in every way. So, Yeah, that was part of the objective approach. Yeah, I did glance over from time to time and observe her emotions or reactions or whatever she did or didn't have, but more of from an objective, totally removed from her, if that makes sense.
It's like a different person than the person you once knew.
Sure.
On that note, I mean, knowing that she's now convicted for killing your son, you would have never married someone or fell in love with someone that you thought would ever harm anyone, I'm sure.
Right. So yeah, I didn't hesitate to say, kind of describe briefly those feelings from the beginning. She was, as I described her, very intelligent, a beautiful woman, fell in love, and but she also had this background of education, certifications, call it job history, of work with children across the board of many different areas. So when it relates to that trust, what more certified or educated person could I find as it relates to the care and well-being of my children? So that makes it all the more gut-wrenching of how it got to that point. It just doesn't make any sense.
You brought up in the trial that it was that moment when her car was not at that school. Walk us through those feelings when you realized that.
So yeah, it was kind of a buildup. And I know you follow it closely, but for those who haven't, there was kind of a buildup. You start with that initial, missing report, and then the request for dental records, and then when I got home, there was, and I think I may have said this in my testimony, it got objected to, but there was reports from neighbors that he had not been seen leaving the house on their Ring cameras or whatever surveillance they had. So there was suspicion early on that the initial story wasn't even valid. And then that would have been that Tuesday. So Monday, January 27th, I got home on Tuesday as you heard the story, she picked me up from the airport, and that whole scenario with the rental car happened. It was that afternoon, early evening, I came home from my first interview with El Paso County Sheriff's Office. Came home, Harley and Laina were there, as we've heard testimony to, and I stopped in to check on them. They had plenty of food. I think people had brought pizza, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to go out looking for him. And my thought was just, I was going to go to Walmart over here in Fountain and check in the game section. It was somewhere he knew about, so maybe he, based on the runaway story, could have found his way there. And then it occurred to me like, hey, I'm just going to go drive and see. And I drove, and I literally drove around the school 3 times and didn't see the Volkswagen. And I remember leaving that parking lot, and there's a stop sign right there when you come out of French Elementary. There's a fire station right there. I stopped right in that area, called Detective Bethel, and that was my first real freak out moment. And I remember I don't freak out often, but I really was. I was out of sorts and kind of out of my mind a little bit, and freaking out on the phone with them. And they said, it's okay, calm down, just come on back downtown. And that's when I went down and did the second interview. But from that point forward, as I stated, for me, she was, if you will, a prime suspect. So
How do you get through those FBI calls that we heard? How do you keep your composure when I'm sure you're so angry and you're so concerned about your son, and this is someone that you trusted, and she's just giving you these lies on the phone? I mean, how did you keep your composure?
Well, sadly, looking back, hindsight's always 20/20. There was other instances in our relationship where something would happen of a much lesser degree, obviously, where maybe $100 goes missing, or at one point she took some money out of the bank account, and then there was a story fabricated. So I kind of had to play Sherlock Holmes in a couple other instances with her. And so she kind of trained me for it. So I had that experience with her directly, obviously much less significant, as I already said. But then sitting there, I knew that, as I stated in my closing statement, I had to put myself in the mind of a killer, which was her mind, to try to get anything I could out of her obviously working in conjunction with the FBI. But yeah, it was brutal. Some of those days were 6-8 hours long, and we didn't even hear half of the phone calls. There was so many more that I had to endure through. But I knew that was my way of helping to find my son. And from the phone calls we did hear, she did give kernels of truth, as the prosecution alluded to. One that sticks out tremendously is the where she went up north to meet the guy to get a bike or look for a bike, and Gannon had fallen off and hurt his head real bad. That was where she introduced his head injuries. So many times in those conversations, she introduced various injuries of his, which to me in the moment was impactful, but then later on, as we know, he was found in March, but we got the autopsy in July timeframe. Learning about all his injuries from the autopsy, I immediately went back to those conversations, and she detailed most of them. So it was more of a hindsight feeling of like, I can't believe I made it through that. In the moment, it's just what I had to do. So
Sure, hearing them back in the courtroom must have been hard.
it was. It's like reliving it all over again. But now, once again, the hindsight part, knowing the whole story, yeah, it was pretty hard knowing what information she had and how much she was manipulating everything. It was pretty hard.
Was it hard hearing her argue that she was not guilty by reason of insanity and these mental health claims?
No, I won't say it was hard. I think it was predictable, knowing her. Anything to prolong, the case, anything to prolong her exposure and the attention being on her. I am a bit surprised she didn't try more things. I call them shenanigans, but I'm surprised she didn't make it harder than she did. And as you heard, it was one of the most significant or largest investigations that El Paso County ever has seen. So she did her darndest to make it hard on everybody. So
Her not speaking at the sentencing, what's your feeling about that?
surprised. We discussed that at length, and my family as well, that we expected her, to do that. I don't know if she took the advice of her attorneys at that point or what, but I was really surprised that she didn't testify and also did not give a statement at the end. I fully expected all of that. And I don't want to speak for anyone else. I think that was a widespread feeling that everyone I know was prepared for her to do that and how we were going to combat that. So,
Are you happy she didn't, or did you want to hear from her?
so those who know me know I'm super competitive. So that side of me, yeah, I did want to have that so it could be another win for the prosecution and my family and our side. But being objective, I think it would have just caused more chaos and maybe not made things more difficult on the prosecution, but just muddied the water. And so it's probably better that she didn't, just being objective. So
You know that there was times throughout the case where the judge even had to say something in the trial about her making middle fingers and the lack of emotion. Did that upset you?
To a degree, it's you sit there and you like, how can you not have any remorse for what you've done? Not only to Gannon, but to Harley. I spoke to that for just a minute, that I also lost a relationship with Harley through this, but Harley was her pride and joy, and how, knowing what she did and how it affected Harley, how could she not have any remorse or emotion? I don't know. I mean, yeah, once again, I'm trying to be disconnected from her, and trying to getting in her mind would only put me back there. So I'll just let her be accountable for that.
Would you want her to tell you anything if she truthfully would give you an answer?
I think I spoke to that also. I would like to know what his last words were. That's a hard thing to sit here and play and replay. What I see it and how I see it playing out, that's kind of part of the torment that you go through from the unknowns. that did transpire. I think that's about it. I don't think my opinion is she would ever be truthful about any reasoning or why or any of that. So once again, not wanting to ever be around her or ever be connected to her again. If I could just get that answer, I think I would be all right. But I assure you, I'm not losing sleep over not getting answers from her. That's not something I'm going to allow her to take control over me.
It was getting answers for Gannon and Justice that's been keeping you up
Sure.
for years.
Yeah. Yep. And then as I spoke to trying to find more time experiencing him and the memories and stuff, that was and of course I talked to Melissa a lot about that. That's really, I don't know why. I think it's because I refuse, as I said, to allow anger and pain to overcome me. Some people question me, how can you be joyful and live a happy life and get remarried? It's because I choose to live that way. I don't choose to live with anger and vengeance and those things that I feel poison you and make you act in a way that is not ours, outside of yourself, so to speak. So I think that's a big part of why I don't want to be connected with her.
You want to move on from
Yeah,
her.
absolutely.
Never forget Gannon, though.
Sure, absolutely.
How do you want people to remember him and remember this case and remember what happened to him?
Yeah, that's one, once again, me and Melissa, especially the past couple of days, have talked a lot about. It's really hard to convey this message properly to just the community in general, but I don't want, let me back up. This case was huge, and I can't not deny that. The judge said it was some of the most horrendous acts and facts of the case that he'd ever seen. That being said, there's millions of other people that have loss in their life, whether it's a parent or a loved one, but especially a child. And that's why our relationship is so special, because Melissa understands what I'm dealing with. And I think probably through our relationship, I've learned so much about everyone's loss is unique, and everyone's loss is the greatest thing they can empathize with. So for me to come out and say mine is larger, mine is the biggest one ever, I'm just not going to do that. Mine is mine, hers is hers. And all those who have loss, I can stand there and look at others with loss and really say, I feel for you. I can't imagine what you're going through, because I've chosen to take that perspective. It would be really easy to stand up on the podium and say, this is the worst thing that anyone could ever imagine. I think that would be a fair assessment, but I just don't think that's right. I think because we love and care for others, that we've chosen to take that path. So.
What do you want people to remember about Gannon?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially at the end, it really came out just how much, and I said it in my testimony, the very first witness was, as I was, just loving. I think that one word sums it up. I mean, I quoted him as being a mama's boy, and I'll never change that. Did he love his daddy? Absolutely. He loved his sisters. His Nana was another most important person in his life, which is Landon's mom. But he just loved everyone. And yeah, and I've said this too, it's, coming from a parent, I think you want the world to think the best of your child, but I've learned so much through this, losing him, that his classmates and, kids that go to church with him and people that knew him separate from me that I didn't even know personally, that was their reaction. He was just so helpful and loving to everyone, his friends and those that weren't his close friends as well. So I think that's it. Just remember Gannon and just remember to love one another. That's kind of a theme for our household: kindness and love. So.
Is that how you try to remember him daily, by sharing love, spreading love, and doing as he would?
Yeah, I think if I live my life to honor him and his legacy, is to be who I was with him, and not change, because we had, and me, him, and Laina had a great relationship, and it was based, the foundation was on that love for one another. And one of my famous sayings, and they probably got tired of hearing it, but never knew it would come true, is, you know, we can replace the table and the carpet. And of course the carpet came into play in the case, but we can get a new house, but we can't get new people in our lives. And the way we treat one another, not just our family, others around us, that really defines who we are. So whenever, as you've asked and others have asked, what defines him, it's just love and kindness.
You brought up how the judge said this is one of the most horrific cases he's ever seen. To hear him say that, to hear him say to Letecia, you know, you had so much hatred, you were jealous of Landen, you wanted to inflict pain. When you heard him say that, you know, what went through your heart, your minds? What were your emotions?
I think it ripped a brand new hole deep inside of me. And yeah, it will take some time to heal from that, because you don't really, once again, I try to embrace my emotions, but also be objective, and you don't want to walk around saying this is the worst thing that's ever happened to any child. But then you hear that from someone, a judge who has seen, you would think, the worst of the worst, and then he says this is one of the worst, if not the worst of the worst. It ripped a hole deep inside. And just to know that, you know, that happened to him being Gannon, that's hard. Especially, I try to be a good leader to my family and protect and provide all those things that I believe a father and a man should be. And then to hear that, I mean, it ripped a hole deep inside of me. So
They showed his pictures, you know, from the autopsy. I think it was one of the prosecutors said his body was in a box in the courtroom the whole case. And what was that like for you?
Yeah, so yeah, I when Dave said that really, Mr. Young, I think he was talking about his picture, but he did say Gannon has been up here the whole time, and that, once again, that revved up some emotions. I think more figuratively than anything, because as I showed the picture at the end, I've known that he was cremated because his remains were so awful. But for me, it's just tragic that that's how he ended up, is just in a little box like that. As I stated in my opening, that, you know, when I first held him, and the last time I held him, he was only big enough to fit in my two hands. So yeah, I think Mr. Young did a great job of bringing it to a little bit of reality there, that, you know, that's what it's about. It's about Gannon, and they've had to, even his picture, we had to shove in a box while the rest of the trial was going on. So I really appreciated that statement from him, and it revved up some emotions for sure.
For you, this is all about Gannon. I'm sure it was very difficult when it was really about her, right? Having to prove what she did in getting justice for him. That must have been unthinkable.
Yeah, and once again, there's two sides. The objective side of me understands that that's the process. But then, you know, the father and the emotional side is, you know, looking on the whole process, and she did her best to make it all about herself. And I know you've been here every step of the way, and early on, especially as she tried to create more attention for herself through different things she was doing. When I would release statements and speak to the media, was always trying to bring it back to him, because that's ultimately what it was about. What happened to him and his legacy, and the world getting to know him as it became more popular and more well known, especially. So.
Oh, absolutely. What do you want people at home to know, to take away from this story that we're doing today?
I think, just to reiterate what I've said over and over, that you can't replace people, and just to, especially your loved ones, but others as well, just share that love daily. And we just discussed this the other day, but we make a purpose to make sure we look all of our children in the eye at least once a day and make sure they know they're loved. And the love we share, we make sure we probably overdo it, but we tell each other how much we love them regularly, because we know that it's only an instant away that you might not get that opportunity. So what I want to leave with the world is that I can lay my head on my pillow in peace with my relationship with Gannon every night for the rest of my life, because I know our last embrace was love. It was, as I always sent them away wherever, or if I was going for training or they were going to their mom's house, it was always, a hug. I love you. I'm in your heart and you're in mine. That was our little saying. And that was the last embrace I had with him. And I can sleep peacefully at night knowing that. And I think that's what I want the world to know. Just don't cherish those moments and don't miss an opportunity to share that love.
Absolutely. Was that he's so, I don't know if the right word would be humble, but he's so tough, right? I'm sure you've seen him go through so much during this case. Talk to me about what it's been like seeing him throughout this case and now after this verdict.
He is humble. He's a proud father. I can relate a lot to his loss, having lost a child. So when he does open up, and I don't know, I feel his pain when he expresses and he shares it. And this has been a long time coming. And yeah, when hearing that verdict, I did feel like it was like a weight lifted, and it's hard to put into words.
Right. I'm like, how strong you must have been.
Yeah,
through
absolutely. Absolutely.
Is there anything else that you guys want to share that you would want me to know?
I mean, I think I've said most of what I want to say. I'm thankful for everyone. I'll start with you guys, the media, but specifically you and a few others I think you're aware of that have been there the whole way, but also been absolutely amazing in your respect for what we're going through and what we've been through, and our privacy, but also honoring, when I need space or flexing with me on that. You guys have been absolutely amazing and truly unforgettable. The media in general as well has been pretty good. I have very few, if any, complaints. I'd say starting from the beginning, the community really showed the goodness and, once again, the love that people do still have for one another. We hear about all the bad all the time, but this is truly a story of unity and togetherness in a neighborhood, moving to a larger city all over the country and even different parts of the world I've heard about. Many thanks to everyone in I just call it the authorities, whether it's the DA's office, the sheriff's office, FBI. Mr. Allen told me recently, he gave me a coin that had Gannon with the cape on, and it has a 22 on it. And the 22 means that there's 22 different agencies in the authorities, law enforcement or whatnot, that have had a part of this. And that's blew me away. I did not know. I thought it was in the 10 or 12, but 22 agencies from around the country that are involved. Like I said, it blew me away. So special thanks to every single person that had a piece of this. I think I want to leave everyone with just a message of hope. Yeah, you've had a lot of experience with me, and thank you for the comment of I'm strong. I'm really actually not. I just hide it very well. I draw a lot of strength from this lady right here. I know she said the same, but her having gone through the same thing, and she hasn't missed a beat, and she knows when I'm struggling before I do. Somehow I accused her of planting a chip in my head when we were dating, because she knows all of my thoughts and all of my feelings as I'm feeling them and before I'm feeling them sometimes. Such a special woman. But a message of hope that, we pray that no one ever experiences a loss like this or like she's experienced or any other loss of a child, but that you can move forward. It takes a lot and it takes a lot of time, but you can put the pieces together. And you can show emotion and you can show feeling, but you can move forward and you can continue on. Wherever you draw that strength from, we draw ours from God. And I acknowledge others draw it from different places, but that hope that you can persevere and you can move on, or move forward, I should say. That's what I want to leave everyone with, a message of hope.
I wanted to ask, it came up throughout the trial that Letecia was pretty manipulative, the way it sounds, of not just yourself, but others in her life. But you were married to her, so how bad was the manipulation? And maybe you see more of that now that the relationship is over. To what extent was she a manipulator?
I think that's one I'll leave alone. I'll let the public kind of make their own determination on that. I think we saw enough to see. Maybe I didn't see all of it, but yeah, she was pretty good at what she does. So I'll leave it there.
Okay. I asked Landen this as well, but it would be pretty understandable for someone in your position to choose to not do interviews, not speak up. But you guys have done interviews since pretty early on in the process. I know you've had your points where you've asked for privacy, but you've been, in the grand scheme of things, pretty vocal. Why is that? And is there any part of that coming from wanting to be a voice for Gannon?
I think that's the totality of why I did it. Maybe going back into the previous question a little bit, I think we see that Tisha was very much about herself, and she was the star of the show, or tried to be the star of the show. And intentionally, every time I felt that that was happening, I would offer a statement, or I shared a lot through my church and their Facebook page, and did a few interviews along the way. But that was the most important part, that this was about him. And I keep drawing on what the judge said. I think when the judge scolded someone in the crowd towards the end of the trial, he brought that up. He's like, this is about that little boy. And he also, once again, was fair and said it was, about someone who might spend the rest of their life in prison. But, the gravity of the situation is really about Gannon and what happened to him.
Okay. I know we've heard throughout this that Gannon was a mama's boy. He loved Landen. But there's something to be said for a bond between a father and his son. Was there anything that you can tell us to give us some true insight into that relationship that only you now can speak to, that special bond between father and son?
He was my firstborn son. I have another baby son now, and I call Melissa's children my sons and daughter as well. But yeah, he was my firstborn, and at that time my only son. And I've shared a few moments along the way, like in my statement I shared about, we're so excited about beating the Zelda game, and just so many things along the way. And I think I wish I had all my pictures from his life here, because that just really sums it up, the different things moments we shared, playing Ninja Turtles, or he loved Thomas the Train when he was a little boy, and just sitting there and spending those moments and hours with him, just going trains around the tracks. Those are the bonding moments, and those are the memories that I want to get back and experience some more. And I've shared that those are some of the things that I've lost, trying to stay away from the pain. But the 11 years I had with him were special, and the best times we could have possibly had. We went to Disney World, went to Hawaii, just shared all kinds of great memories. And it was just an amazing time. And we made the most of it, like I've already said. So
I know yesterday we saw a photo of him holding up a sign that said future soldier, I believe, or something to that effect. He was only 11, and I didn't know what I was going to do at 11. Right. But did he ever express any desires of what he wanted to be when he grew up? And secondary to that, Did you ever have a vision as his father of what you saw him becoming in his future?
Yeah, so I came, obviously you've heard I'm in the military now still. Came from a family history of that. My grandpa served in World War II in the Navy, and other members of my family as well throughout the years. So yeah, I had told my children, I expect you to, when you get older, maybe not the military if you choose not to, but some form of service needs to be a part of your life, needs to be kind of at the foundation of your life. Once again, drawing on what I've said, it's the people in our lives that matter and the people that surround us. And so what we can do to serve others, whether it's working in the kids ministry at church or, you know, going to the soup kitchen or whatever, you know, different versions of that. But that was a huge part of how I was raising them. And if you ask Laina, she'll still talk about, you know, oh, should I join the Air Force or the Army, you know, jokingly in her mind. But no, Gannon, what he wanted to be was a video game designer. That's was his big thing that he always said. And I actually was a little surprised when I got that picture from his 4th grade teacher. I remember getting it in the moment when they did that. It was, I think they went through this a few questions of what do you want to be when you grow up, put it on a sign, and I was blown away when he said future U.S. soldier. But it just goes to back to our bond, like you said, and back to my intentionality and how I was raising them to have a core or foundation or mind for service of some degree. So.
Okay. With Gannon's case, obviously, it gained attention locally very quickly and eventually across the United States. And I can't point to an example, but I wouldn't be surprised if people outside the United States have heard of this. But not every missing child or child death investigation gains that kind of momentum. Why do you think Gannon's case gained the attention and the support that it did? What made it different?
I don't know. I can't speak for the mind of everyone. I feel deep down inside that Letecia's actions drove a lot of that. It was kind of a polarizing thing. You know, of course, everybody has a heart. I say everybody, but the community at large has a heart for children. And I've wondered that same thing too, as I've seen other news reports of, you know, missing 12-year-old or this happened to, you know, a horrible thing happened to a child here or there. Why did this land on our shoulders? But as we learned, ultimately through what the judge said, and I've already referenced this, the heinousness of the crime, I think warrants the response. And I don't think that's selfish of me to say. I didn't understand how horrible it was, truly. For me, it is horrible, but when the judge said that in his closing, that impacted me to my core, that this was truly a horrible, horrible thing that happened to my son. And I think, especially once you know, his body was found across the country, and then the autopsy came out, and we learned about what happened to him. I think that kept the momentum going. And do I think it would have ever faltered or fell off? Probably not, based on how it started. But that definitely kept that momentum going of the community support and just how many people have tuned in.
Okay. I think one of the other reporters already kind of sort of asked you this a little bit, but you said yesterday that you want Letecia stripped of your last name. How infuriating was it for you, and if that's the wrong word, please correct me, to have her referred to, and this whole case has been known as the Stauch case, Letecia Stauch. I mean, how was that for the past 3 years, knowing that that was the name attached to her?
Well, and this is going pretty deep on this one, but if you think about it, based on her searches, we learned from the evidence she was not happy with me, and that's fine. She didn't want to be there. We've established that. I've attested to that as well. So then why is it so important to keep a hold of that? She didn't show up to our divorce hearing when that finally went through. So why is it so important to hold on to that, except possibly to stick it to the man, if you will? So yeah, it's pretty infuriating because I know the intent behind it is to have that being said aloud in the public, and that I would be hurt by that. And sure, I was hurt by it, and it's infuriating. But once again, I'm not going to let that take over my emotions and control me. But I did state that in my closing, and I don't change it. It's hard and it's infuriating.
Okay. I'm just going to look over my notes here. I think I probably asked you everything on my list. Yeah, I think that's all I had, unless there's something that you feel needs to be said that hasn't been covered throughout all of this.
I think we're good where we're at now.
Okay.
Yep, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Landen Bullard sat down with our Melissa Henry, and she says misinformation was spread about her by Letecia Stauch, which came to light during the trial.
At various points in the trial, we heard Letecia Stauch speak in previously recorded phone calls, and we saw videos. At times, Letecia Stauch said Gannon's mother had a drug problem and was homeless. At one point, Letecia said she took care of Gannon and his sister because their biological mother did not want to. That mother is now speaking out, saying those were lies. She says those statements about her character were made in reference to a time when she was in the hospital, when she trusted Letecia to take care of the kids as their stepmom. I asked Landen Bullard what she wants the community to know about her now.
The drugs and me being homeless, people had to prepare their children to meet me when I came here. If I was a drug addict and a homeless person, I would not have my daughter. I would not hold a job. I've never not had a job until I was in the hospital. And to take that time and totally twist it, it hurt. And it bothers me still, but I have to move forward.
I also talked with Gannon's mother about who Gannon was. She shared details only a parent would know, talking about his smile and personality.
But to hear it was words that I've been waiting for 3 years, dreading years, so it was relieving.
I think today the dust hasn't really settled yet, but we're just trying to relax.
Al Stauch wants to focus on the good memories of Gannon. He said he'll never move on, but he can finally move forward and begin healing.
He would want us to be happy, to get along, for me and his mom to have a good relationship as far as the kids go, and that's what we're going to do. And that's the best way we can honor him, Ashley.
Al added the past 3 years has been filled with so much anger, pain, and emotion. His son did nothing wrong.
But to take the life of an innocent little boy, and I'll repeat it again, I think his only crime was that he loved his mom more than his stepmom, and that kind of sums it up.
When asked what one of the most impactful parts of the trial was, Al said it was when Judge Gregory Werner said the facts in this case are some of the most horrific he's ever seen.
That hit me at the core. That, I mean, yeah, it's my son, and for me, the loss, I can't explain how great the loss is.
Gannon's mom, Landen Bullard, said she can finally breathe. During her victim impact statement yesterday, she wanted to remind Letecia of all the love she had before Gannon's death.
It is a form of guilt, in a sense. It's like, what else could I have given? She had it all, and she took it all. So, but she is not going to get a sick form of victory. And we're going to keep going on, and we're going to stay strong, Laina and Nova.
Landen said the not guilty by reason of insanity plea was calculated. She also spoke about a video that was played a handful of times during trial. That video taken by Letecia one day before Gannon's disappearance. In the video, you can hear Gannon saying, "I'm just worried about my burns."
You had no business making that video, none. Knowing what you are going to do, it's already planned. Had no business making that video of my son crying. You can hear the fear and love still in his voice, begging.
One of the things that was striking as we were watching those victim statements yesterday, Diane and I, seeing the emotion in that courtroom from the mom and the dad. We saw the judge wiping away tears. Obviously, those statements and just this whole horrific crime touched people so deeply. But the one key was Letecia never seemed to show any kind of emotion at all. Was that consistent with her during the course of the trial? You were there every day.
Yeah, I was there every day, and really throughout the entire trial, Letecia Stauch didn't have many emotions at times. She was just facing forward. Often her head was down. You heard no emotional crying yesterday, and really everyone in the courtroom yesterday, you saw them crying. We heard all of the gasps, Rob, from the back of the courtroom. You mentioned the judge at one point had to wipe away tears. District Attorney Michael Allen had to wipe away tears. Everybody was embracing one another, and I sat, you know, right behind Letecia Stauch. Not once did we see any remorse, any emotion, nothing. We also know the judge did ask her, do you have any words for the family? Do you want to say anything?
Right.
Letecia said no.
Right, she just wanted to ask for some specific prison to be sent to, and the judge said, well, I don't have that authority to do that. The DOC said that. But yeah, it seemed like the only emotion we saw during the whole trial from her was when she was flipping off people surreptitiously during the courtroom early on, and the judge admonished her for that. But anyway, sociopath, put her away for life.
Yeah.
Man, oh man.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Ashley. Great job covering that trial. After Stauch was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison, a rainbow actually appeared outside, and you posted that photo. It was very impressive and stimulating for everybody. There's your tweet.
Yeah, this is a photo that I was able to take actually yesterday after the live shots as that verdict and sentence came in. This is probably about 6:20 or 6:30 or so. You can see just a few photos of that rainbow. These photos are actually from other people here in the community who took these. And I think what I said too is perhaps maybe this is a sign from Gannon to his loved ones right now. Just take a look at all of that incredible video coming in. And you know what, Rob, I did ask Al and Landen about this. I said, hey, do you believe in signs? And they said, we've been getting signs all along during this trial. The one sign they said they have gotten from God is when that bridge inspector was able to find that suitcase with Gannon's body under the bridge after that. He said, had that never have happened, we may not have been in that courtroom for the past 5 or 6 weeks.
Things did turn out, as tragic as this is, a little bit of justice. Now the healing begins.
Yeah.
Great job, Ashley. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.